Greetings and hello, everyone. Welcome to CNSL 627 Advanced Techniques of Counseling. My name is Dr. Danelle Cox, and I am really looking forward to getting to work with you all this term through our asynchronous parts as well as our synchronous parts. I want to share just a little bit about who I am, not just academically, but also kind of what I look like as a counselor educator and a counselor, because the work that we do in this course is going to be personal, experiential, and often challenging, but in meaningful ways. My background is in professional counseling. I have experience in teaching, in person. I previously was at Bowie State University, which is in the university system schools for 7 years. I taught there face to face. In addition to that, I have experience teaching asynchronous, synchronous, hybrid as well. I have experience in supervising, teaching clinical courses for a good chunk of my academic career as a counselor educator, as well as I have a small private practice where I supervise LGs as well, and working very closely with students like yourselves, counselors in training, as you're moving from foundational skills into more complex and clinical thinking that can benefit you and your client in the clinical work that you do. Much of my work centers on culturally responsive assessment, case conceptualization, supervision, and building professional identities for counselors in training as well. In other words, I spend a lot of time helping counselors learn how to clearly, ethically, and compassionately think when situations are not so straightforward, as is most of the time in counseling. Counseling is a lot of gray. So hopefully you have learned that so far. If not, welcome to the grayness. As an instructor, my teaching approach is grounded in a few core values that show up in the work that I do and the feedback that I'll provide, ways that I may challenge you. One of which is critical pedagogy, and particularly the work of bell hooks. And in simple terms, this means I approach teaching as a collaborative and engaged process rather than a top-down transfer of information. Typically in the classroom, particularly for education in itself is a system of oppression. And so typically in the classroom, we see very top-down transfer of information, and we see professors who may be very authoritative, not really interested in being collaborative, more I'm kind of barking at you. That is not the kind of process and the kind of classroom that I would like to set up. I would like to set it up so that you are bringing the wealth of knowledge and skills that you may already have, as what I call a real adult, bringing that into the classroom to align with our community in our classroom. Bell Hooks describes teaching as a practice of engaged learning. And so I know for myself and for many others who may have gone to college when passive learning was the primarily the way that you learned. And passive learning looks like lectures that have no engagement, no questions, no feedback, no activities. That is what passive learning, it assumes that you are going to learn through passively hearing things, passively taking a test, or as I joke and say, through osmosis, right? You're just gonna suck it in. But what I truly believe in my approach, rooted in bell hooks, is it is through engaged learning. So an investment and a collaboration that we both have. I make a promise to you all to provide information, content, to provide feedback and evaluation that helps move your growth. And you make an investment as a student to do your readings, to do your assignments, to ask questions, and to come ready to learn. I like to have in the classroom a setting that's where you're making meaning of the work that you're going to be doing, because as a counselor, the work that we do has a lot of different meaningful impacts. In this course, that also translates to creating learning spaces where your experiences, questions, identities, developing professional perspectives matter. Knowledge does not always come from textbooks or instructors, right? So That's another really critical piece of hooks in her teaching and how that shows up in my classrooms are, especially in the age of like Google, AI, um, readily accessible information outside of the classroom, right? Information in textbooks and from me are not the only ways that we can learn. You bring information and knowledge, right? So I want to make sure that we are having those come forth and really having them emerge through our dialogues together, our reflections, and also the application of the skills and techniques. Now, what this practically means is that I don't see this classroom, especially an online classroom, as a place where you simply consume or take in the content. Instead, we try to design the course so that you are consistently asked to analyze, question, apply, and reflect. Really critical skills for a counselor. In my class, you're going to be invited to think critically about counseling techniques in examining power, culture, context, identity, and how that shapes clinical work, and to notice how your own assumptions and reactions may show up in the counseling process. I want those to come forward. I want you to pay attention to those, okay? This approach is especially important in this type of classroom where we're focused on techniques and being able to demonstrate them in a way that feels genuine and authentic to yourself. Advanced techniques are not just about what you're doing in session, but it's about how and why you're choosing one response over another with a particular client or within a particular context. Critical pedagogy supports this by encouraging you to slow down, think relationally, and stay curious rather than relying on rigid formulas or rigid theories or practices that you may find other counselors or other curriculums that may follow that alignment. In an online learning environment, this shows up also in the way that our discussions are structured, how I offer my feedback, and how I encourage multiple perspectives within our dialogues. I really truly aim to foster a classroom climate that is rigorous and respectful, where thoughtful disagreement is part of learning, and where growth often comes from sitting with complexity rather than rushing to certainty. I really believe that in the world we're living in or have always lived in, if we took the time to slow down, hear multiple perspectives, kind of be curious about them rather than holding fast that our views and our ways are the best things to do it. Alongside my pedagogical foundation, there are also three additional values that guide how I teach in the course. And I hope if anything, you walk away understanding these values and seeing it show up in our classroom. So the first is I believe counseling is skill-based and a reflective profession. You're going to be practicing different techniques in this course. And for example, advanced interviewing, conceptualizing assessments, and interventions. Just as important in the learning about it is the why you're choosing a particular response and how your own values, assumptions, and reactions shape your clinical work. This could be a class that could be helpful to have journaling that you can go back to and revisit as you in the course or at certain parts of the course. Second, I strongly believe in developmental learning. We all come at whatever developmental kind of level we come at based off of our experiences, based off of who we are. This course is not about being perfect or doing it right on the first try. To be honest, you're probably not going to get it right on the first try, right? That's for human. Um, and also those are some of the models we want to reflect to our clients is that you don't have to be perfect to have relations to do certain things, right? So in this classroom, for me, it's about continuing to practice skills, taking in feedback, um, and being mindful of some of the reactions you may have to taking back feedback. Sometimes that's often some of my students in skills courses or in clinical courses, practicum and internship. It's that the nervousness comes from, oh my gosh, I'm going to receive feedback. Somebody's going to watch this, right? And so we're helping you to practice how to take that feedback because what that looks like in the real world, it is a real world, but is a client is going to give you feedback that you might not have wanted or asked for. And we have to be mindful of how to receive that and be able to implement that a part of their treatment. We're also going to be refining. And so just think of those skills: practice, receive feedback, reflecting, refining on each skill that you're going to do. My expectation isn't that you know everything, right? It's that you will just engage in a very thoughtful and honest way that feels true to who you are. And lastly, I value professionalism and humanity. Counseling work really requires us to be competent in the things that we're doing, to abide by our ethics and our laws, and to provide structure for our clients. In addition to that, and most importantly, it also requires humility, being cultural, humility, being culturally, having cultural humility, being open and caring for yourself and others, and trying to model that balance in how I teach and how I provide feedback and how I interact with students is my goal. You're going to notice that our class is a mix of discussions, applied assignments, experiential learning, and we also have 2 weekends of intensive practice. So some weeks are going to feel more intellectually demanding, more reading. Other weeks will feel more reflective, and then other weeks may feel more emotionally stretching. And I just want to validate and normalize and help you understand that that is a very intentional process. This is how you grow as a counselor and the skills and the interventions that you're going to use with your clients. Advanced counseling work access to hold complex situations, tolerate uncertainty, and stay grounded while you are learning as well. A quick note about communication and support. Again, I want this space to be where you feel comfortable asking questions, seeking clarification, engaging professionally with one another, and also challenging me if you may see something or you don't agree with something. I I often like to engage in these conversations, right? This is how we become critical thinkers, and we what some folks might say we use our third eye. Everything in counseling requires a third eye. Okay. If something feels unclear, challenging, or overwhelming, do not sit by yourself. Please reach out to me. Okay. Um, Text message and phone calls are probably the quickest way to get to me. So I'll make sure that those are available. And email is always available, you know, to hop onto a quick call or a Zoom. You know, please don't sit in uncertainty by yourself. Successful counselors don't work in isolation, right? And neither should you as a counselor. Let's practice those skills now so that they are well refined when you move into the field. I am really looking forward to seeing how each of you shows up in the course, in your skills, and how you're using interventions, and which interventions you choose over others. Your questions and insights and your growing clinical voice are all needed in our classroom. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the course.